Hi, I'm Tom McMahon. I'm the Dade County Democratic Chair. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Georgia Democratic Rural Council. Welcome to this training video. I hope you find it useful. It is best if you are watching this video as the third of a set of videos that I have linked in the YouTube description below this one. The first one, if you're brand new to Votebuilder, is the Votebuilder 101 link. That comes from the folks who run Votebuilder itself. Just an introduction to how the program looks and certain basic features. The second video that you probably should watch before this one is a training video that we did online in a Zoom on July 18th of this year. And you'll see that link in the in the YouTube description or in a comment below this. It will say July 18th Zoom meeting. So you might want to watch that one second and then watch this one last. What this one is going to do is just simply walk through the creation of about 6 different lists that you can use in your county. I'm not going to go into ways that you can use these lists yet. We're going to do that later. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to create the lists, how to save them, and then how to use various parameters to find the people for each of these lists. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. The very first list I'm going to create is a list of all of your voters in your county. So the very first step after you've logged in, you will always come to this welcome page, and it may not look exactly like this. In fact, this page and the next page in different people's Votebuilder accounts can look a little bit different, but I'm just going to assume that you're on this welcome page and you see a create a new list link somewhere toward the middle. Click on that. That will take you now to creating a new search page. And on this page, you will see a list or a listing of various panes or windows that have different sorting techniques and information on them. For each of these lists we're going to create, I'm always going to do 3 things first. And I'm going to show you those now. The first thing I'm always going to do is go down to the pane that says Home Districts, and yours may not be in the same order. Just find it wherever it is. You can open and close these panes by clicking on the arrow. I'm going to go to the Home Districts pane and select my county. I only have one county to select, and because of that, you don't really have to do this because it's kind of built into your county's account. But there are times where you may have more than one county in there, or some people just have more than one county because they have different roles. So I think it's just good practice to always select your county first in the Home Districts window. Scroll down until you see the voter status and voter registration window. In a lot of lists, in fact, in every list after this one, we're only going to use registered active voters. The difference between registered active voters and registered inactive voters, registered active voters are voters who are registered and have been voting recently in current or in very recent election cycles. Registered inactive voters are people who are registered to vote, but they haven't voted in the last couple of election cycles, and they get moved into an inactive status. If they stay inactive too long, they'll eventually get removed from being registered entirely. So the only thing an inactive voter has to do to become active is simply vote or contact their voter office locally, and they'll shift their status back to active. For this particular list we're going to start off with, this is a list of all of your county's voters. We're going to have both of these groups of people included. So leave both of those checked. Go down to the suppressions window. This is a very important window, and it can be a very annoying window as you get to use Votebuilder more and more. It can be annoying because it resets to these values that you see on the screen every single time. You have to therefore go back to it every single time and keep your parameters consistent if you want a consistent set of lists that you're creating. Suppressions are exactly what they sound like. They are ways of eliminating certain groups of people. Maybe they have bad voting addresses. Maybe they don't want to be contacted, maybe by mail or I'm sorry, by walking or by calling them. There are ways to exclude these people from your list that can be very handy. But for the list we're doing now, I want everybody in this list, so I'm going to remove all suppressions. The only one I'm going to keep is excluding deceased. There are going to be deceased people at any one time in your voter rolls, no matter what, because they don't get removed right away. So there's always a certain number of dead people that are still listed in your voting rolls, and this allows them to be excluded as long as they have been marked deceased, which sometimes they're not. So you can still have dead people unwittingly included sometimes in these lists, but by using excluding deceased, you'll get rid of almost all of that. So I've set my parameters. I've got my home county. I've got both active and inactive voters. I've removed all suppressions except for the one, and now I'm going to preview my results. I come up with 13,727 people. For my county, that sounds right. We're a small county. Our population is around 17,000. If anything, that's probably a little high because there's a reason for that I won't get into here, but that sounds about right. That's why I always recommend you preview your results. It's a way of kind of giving you a common sense little test before you actually create the list. Does that number make sense? In this case, it does. Your county's probably bigger than mine, so that number should be bigger than that, depending upon how big your county is. So I'm going to run my search. That brings me to my list page. And all I want to do at this point is save my list. We're not going to do anything else with it for now. So I go save list as. There are two ways you can save lists. One is a static list that just includes the people that are in it right now and nobody else. The other is more of a search or a dynamic list. This can come in very handy in a lot of cases. We're not going to use that now. We will go over this, the use of this later. A dynamic list basically updates every time that you open it. If the information has changed, it will change with it. A static list will just stay the same. We're going to select that. We're going to create a folder. Now, in your case, you probably never created a folder, so you probably want to select new. Give your folder a name. I'll show you what I've named mine. I've already created mine and then the list. I called my list or my folder 2023-2024 lists. So if you want to call yours the same, all you have to do is click on new folder, type that in here. Just type in 2023-24, etc. And once you have that typed in there, I'm just going to go back up here and select mine. Give this list a name. I called mine 2023 DADE voters or all voters. I've already saved it. It doesn't matter how you call it. Just give it your county's name, the year, and something like all voters or something like that. Once you've done that, go down here and hit save, and you've saved your list. I'm going to skip all that since I've already done it. I'm going to go back to the home page. Okay. Once you've saved your list, your list is still loaded. You'll notice it says 13,727 people here. That list is still my active list. It will be yours too. Now we want to create a second list. And this second list is something that I think you'll use a lot over time once you've created it and once you've understand various ways that you can use it. The second list we're going to create is a Democratic caucusing list. These are people who are primary voters in your county. If you look in your bylaws or in the Georgia state bylaws, they will talk about people who you should contact as a committee when you hold a caucus. A person eligible to be in a Democratic caucus is a person who has come to Democratic meetings or who has signed an affidavit stating that they are a Democrat, or who has voted in recent Democratic primaries. You can use Votebuilder for that last one. Who are the people who have voted in Democratic primaries? By doing this, you can have like an up-to-date, intact list of possible caucusing voters that if you want to contact in some kind of individual way with a postcard or with an email or with a phone call, you can do that. I mean, there's lots of things you can use this list for. It's also just good to know who these people are, I think, where they live and so forth, because you are going to be reaching out to them eventually over elections or what have you. So let's create a new list. Again, we're going to go through the same 3 steps initially. Select your county. This time, we're only going to use registered active voters because we're looking for people who have voted recently in primaries, and they're all going to be registered active. None of them are going to be registered inactive unless they've recently moved. You may have an occasional rare instance of that, but don't worry about it. Let's just use registered active. Same thing with suppressions. We're going to remove all of them. We're going to exclude deceased. Now, there's an additional step here that we need to do, and that is we need to look at the person's voting history. Voting history is one of the more powerful features of Votebuilder, because if you look here, I'll just scan down through the window first. Every single election of any kind, general elections, primary elections, presidential primary elections, runoffs, municipal elections, you name it, they're all in here all the way back to the late 90s. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to look for anyone who has voted in recent Democratic primaries. If you're a smaller county like me, you probably want to select from more than one primary to keep your potential voter caucusing list a bit larger. If you're a bigger county, you may only want to select the most recent Democratic primary. However you do it in your county is up to you. Let's just do it. In this case, let's select the last 3 primaries: the 2022 primary, the 2020 primary, and the 2020 presidential primary. Remember, there's always 2 primaries in a presidential election year. So the very first thing up here you see is a statement, include anyone who did, and then there's a set of logical operators that you can choose from. I'm going to choose any because I'm looking for anybody who has voted in any one of those 3 Democratic primaries. I then have to scroll down until I get to the primaries, and right there they are. The first one, 2022 primary, I select it. That activates that section. It's already selected to voting. All I have to do now is click on Democrat, and anybody who voted in the 2022 Democratic primary will show up in my list. Same thing, I'm going to go ahead and include the 2020 primary, select Democrat. Then I'm going to go down and select the presidential primary. They're a bit further down. You have to look for these things sometimes too. Here we go, 2020 presidential primary, voted Democrat. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so I've got my selections made. I've got all my suppressions and everything else set. Preview my results. I get around 600 people, which again, for a small county that's majority Republican, that's probably a good figure, I think, for that. That makes sense. So I'm going to run my search. Now I have my lists, and I'm going to save that list. Same process as before. Save list, save as a static list in this case. You should have already created your folder. Mine's called 2023-24 lists, whatever yours is called, select that. Give your list a name, 2023, your county caucusing Democrats or something along those lines. Go ahead and do that, and then go down here and hit save. I've already done it again, so I'm not going to follow through and do that part. But go ahead and give your name. You don't have to put a description in, and just save. All right, so we've done that. That is now our active list, but we're going to go on now and create a third list. These are your likely or leaning Democrats. Not everybody who's a Democrat in your county will vote in the Democratic primary. Some will vote in the Republican primary. If you live in a Republican county where most local offices are on that side of the aisle, a lot of Democrats will cross over and vote in the Republican primary so they can vote on those offices. Or some people just don't like to vote in primaries, period. So not everybody who is a Democrat in your county votes in your primary. So what we're going to do now is create a list of probably Democrats in your county who were not in that caucus list that we just created. So let's go ahead and create a new list. We'll go through do the same things we've already done before. We can close the voting history and we don't need that one now. We need to select our county. Just to have the active voters on this. Let's not worry about it. You can choose inactive if you wish. I don't do that most of the time. Remove suppressions, exclude deceased. Okay, so now how do we find these people? If they don't vote in primaries, how do we know if somebody is most likely a Democrat or not? There are a couple of ways to do that in the program. One way that we're not going to use, I just want to show it to you. There's a window called Likely Party, and if you click on that, you'll see a list of designations. Votebuilder has its own internal scoring method, and it labels people accordingly by what it sees. This is not the most reliable way of doing or figuring out who belongs to what party. It is there, it does have its uses, but we're not going to use that here. What we're going to use is the scores window. So find that. When you open that, you will see just a whole bunch of different kind of scoring methods. I don't care what they're called. Don't worry about all that. The one that the party recommends you use right now will always be the one that's at the very top. Now, by the time next year's election rolls around, we may have a different one on the top than the one that's there right now. So don't even worry about the name of it. Just use the one that's on top. Okay, so that's this one right here. So how do I find out who the Democrats are? If you look at those boxes, they have a scoring range of 0 to 100. 0 means that this is like the ultimate Republican. Just, super Republican, I guess, if you want to call it that. 100 means the exact opposite, super Democrat, just ultimate Democrat, votes Democrat, thinks Democrat. Everything about the person is as Democrat as you can get. In theory, everybody has a score somewhere in between those two extremes. They're 0 and 100 are sort of hypothetical extremes that are not scored. Everybody's like 0.1 to 99.9 or whatever, but it's just you have to have a bounds somewhere. So if we want to find out who the Democrats are in our county, you do a scoring range of 50 to 100. That should be all the people in your county that Votebuilder thinks is either a Democrat or seems to be leaning that way. Okay, so let's preview our results. Notice that number's several hundred higher than the previous number we had with caucusing Democrats. That makes sense because you're going to have people who don't vote in your primary. But you're also, in this case, going to have people who are also on your caucusing list. We don't want to duplicate people. We want to get rid of anybody in this 1171 who's already on that first list that we've created. So how do we do that? We're going to add a step. We're going to remove people. We don't have to worry about the scoring. That's already been done here. Just for form's sake, just to keep good form, select your county, select or deselect inactive, remove suppressions, exclude deceased. Kind of get used to doing this every single time. Now I'm going to go down to my saved lists. Click on that, open it up. I'm going to look for that list that I created. Now, you probably only have a few lists. You may only have the one or two. I've got a ton of lists in here. Just get added over time. Sometimes the party will dump lists into county accounts. But remember, we created a file or a folder that had 2023, let me find it, 2023, 2024 list. That was the name of my folder. Now, if you created that yourself, you should find it there. You may have created it with a slightly different name. But if you look over here, you'll see the list or the folder name first and then colon and then the list name. I'm looking for the caucus list that I created. So I'm going to select that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit preview my results. It's going to remove all the people that were in that list. Okay, you'll see the number has dropped down to 677. So that got rid of all my caucusing Democrats who were also in this list. I can now hit run search, and I have my list of likely or leaning Democrats. You can call them either one. Go save list, do the same old thing, use the folder that you've already created, that one, or whatever you called it. Name it 2023, your county likely or leaning Democrats, and hit save. Okay. So now you have two lists. Notice that I think they're probably going to be roughly the same size for most counties. You'll notice that mine were both in the 600s. So that's typically been the case for the past few years, that our caucusing number and our likely or leaning number are roughly the same. It may be the case for you, it may not, but now you have two lists, and basically you've got everybody who might be or is a Democrat in your county on those two lists. Those are the lists that you'll use more than anything. But I thought I'd go ahead and show you how to create another couple of lists, just so you'll have a set of lists that encompass everyone in your county. So the next group I want to create is a list of all your younger voters, as well as people who have recently registered to vote of any age, because they're kind of like young voters to you. They're new, okay? They just moved into your county or they just registered to vote. You may have need to want to reach out to these people for something, to welcome them to the county, to include them on phone banks, whatever, so let's create a list of them now. We're going to create a new list. We're going to do the same three things that we've been doing every time. Select your county, get rid of the inactive, because these are new voters. They should not be inactive, or very few of them should be. Remove all suppressions. Again, we'll get rid of the deceased. Now those are the three things we always do. Now we're looking for two different groups of people. We're looking for younger voters, and we're looking for people who have recently registered to vote. So we're going to have to do two additional steps here. Let's go up here, scroll until you find the one that says age, registration date. Open that up. Okay, I'm going to count young people as anyone 18 to 39. You can set your own parameters on that, but just for consistency's sake, let's just do 18 to 39. Okay, so anybody 18 to 39. And that's our first group of people. We're going to do the registered group here on a second trip through. So let's just, for now, we'll just stick to that group of people. We've got everybody in our county who is 18 to 39. Preview results. And there we go. Now, some of those people will already be on your other two lists. So we have to do a couple of additional steps here. I'm going to quickly go through them. Let's try to get rid of people who are on the two Democratic lists that we've already created. Add a step. We're going to remove people. We're going to do the things that we always do. Select our county. Again, it's not so important to do it this time. We're just going to keep doing it for form's sake, so we can know that we're keeping a consistent set of results. Go down to your My Saved Lists. Open that window up and look and see. Look, we're going to look for the caucusing list first. That one. So if there are any of these younger people or newly registered, or actually just younger people at this point, if they're on that list, they will disappear. That number should go down a little bit. Okay, it went down a little bit. Add another step. Remove the likely or leaning Democrats. Our county, get rid of the inactive. Now we want to exclude the likely Democrat list. We should see this number go down a bit more. Okay, so now we've got all the young people in the county who are not on the previous two lists. We want to add one more group of people. We're going to add people this time. We're going to add the recently registered people. Same box. Let's just go back to most recent election. Oops, too far. Happened on November 8th. So anybody who's registered to vote from the last election to today, today is July 18th as I'm doing this. So anybody who has registered to vote since then, let me select my county. Always do this little book shopkeeping thing here. Remove suppressions, exclude, okay, all of that. These are very new registered voters since the last election. I don't think we have to worry about them being on any kind of previous list. They're very new. So now let's preview our results. This number could go up a little bit. It did. We've now added the recently registered people. Let's run our search. You'll notice this list is significantly larger than your previous two lists, which that makes sense if it is. And some counties, if you're in more of a metro kind of county, the number of younger people will make up a larger amount of your county. Typically speaking, rural counties have a lower youth population percentage-wise than urban or suburban counties do. So, you know, we can talk about demographics in a later video, which we will. Okay, so now let's save this list. We have another nice little list for future use. You'll save it. You'll use that folder that you used before. I called this list on mine 2023, I think Dade Young and registered voters, something like that. You can call it something similar. Just have young and registered in there somewhere in your county name. And go down here and hit save. I've already done that, so I'm going to back to my home position. Okay, so now we have three lists. We have two lists of Democrats caucusing and likely, and we have all the young people who are not on those lists and recently registered voters. Let's make one more list that will include everybody else in your county, and that is the Republican list. Let's go back. We're going to do this one a slightly different way just to show you there are different ways of doing this. Remember, the very first thing we created was a list of all of your voters. We're going to call that list back up again now and use that to do the thing that we're about to do. We'll go find that list. And I called it Date All Voters was mine. So I'm going to open that list up, click on it, hit OK. Now, all I have to do with this list, well, I have to do a couple of things. But once I remove some people, it's going to have everybody else who's left. And I'm just going to call them Republicans because they don't fit into any of the other lists. So I've got this big comprehensive list. Let me start removing people from it. First thing I want to do in this case is remove, well, I want to go do my things that I always do, select Dade. In this case, I want to remove people who are inactive. Remove my suppressions, exclude deceased. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the inactive people because I'm just looking for voters here. So when I hit preview on this, it should reduce this number down a bit. I noted an error and I made a slight edit. I went back and I opened up the wrong list initially, but same process that I've already talked about. Now I have my list of all the voters in the county. I'm going to add a step. I'm going to remove people. I'm going to go down and do Dade. And I'm going to, this time I'm going to leave the inactive box checked because I want to get rid of those people. Remember, we're removing people here. So I want to make sure, go through the suppressions thing. Now, if I preview my results, that number will come down to 11,000. Okay, that makes sense. Now all I have all the inactive registered voters gone. And this now includes all my county voters who are actively registered. Now I want to remove a couple of other groups. I want to remove those three lists I've already created. So let me add a step, remove. And again, select your county. This is just good. I make myself do this, and sometimes even then I forget. You can get rid of the inactive thing at this point. That's fine. Remove suppressions, exclude deceased. Now go down to your My Saved Lists. Go find your caucusing list first. We're going to start removing those three lists from this one. That number could go down. It did. Add a step, remove people. It gets very repetitive sometimes doing this. Select the county. Don't worry about inactive. Remove your suppressions. Exclude your deceased. Go to your saved list. This time, let's remove the likely or leaning Democrats. There. This number could go down again. It did. If you remember, those lists were about 600 something people each. That number went down pretty much accordingly. Add one more step. Remove one more group of people. Select the county. Get rid of the inactive. Exclude the deceased. Go find your young and registered voter list. Yeah. Now that list was much bigger. This should go down by a couple of thousand now. Okay. So everybody that's in this list now should be, in my county, they should be a Republican, pretty much in your county too. You'll notice that list is about 5 times bigger, 4 to 5 times bigger than the other 2 Democratic lists put together. And that's about right. Actually, let's see, I had about 1,200, 1,300 people in that. 13, 26, 50, yeah, it's somewhere between 4 and 5 times larger than that number. And that conforms to, that roughly conforms to Democratic performance in my county. Usually Democrats earn anywhere lately from mid-teen to low 20s, and sometimes higher, but that's usually their normal range, which is about a 4 to 1, 5 to 1 kind of range. So that makes sense. Okay, so run search, and this is my Republican list. I can go now and save the list, do the same thing as before. Find your folder. Give it a name, and I called mine 2023 Republican, Dade Republicans, and you can call yours something similar. Okay, so that gives you a set of lists that covers your entire county. There's one more list I want to quickly go over. It won't take long. Because this is a municipal election year, I want to just show you how to create a municipal list of your incorporated town voters. Very simple. Create a new list. We're going to go through the same process we've already been through before. Select your county. We don't want inactive voters here. Remove all suppressions except for deceased. Go back up to this home districts window. Look for municipality. In my county, we only have one incorporated town, Trenton. So it's easy for me to select that. If your county has more, when you do that pull down menu, just select one. You can create a list for each town. You have to go back and do this over and over again for each one. But we'll just do the one here. Let's preview my results. Gives me about 1,800 people with 1,850, which is about right. Trenton's got over 2,000 people in it total. If anything, that number is probably a little bit high because of a certain situation with a trade school that exists around here that kind of inflates the numbers a little bit. That's neither here nor there. So that's a good list. Run it, and then, as before, save it. And you'll save your list and to that folder. Give it a name. This would be, I will name this 2023 Trenton Municipal List, or Trenton Municipal Voters. You can name yours 2023, whatever the town's name is, Municipal Voters, same thing. Okay. Okay, so you have now a set of lists that we can use and do various things with that has everybody in your county on it. In future trainings, we are going to go over and show you some ways to use those lists. But for tonight, we've created lists, we've saved them, and we've used various demographic and other features within Votebuilder to find people that we want to contact later down the road. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for watching.